Hi, welcome to today's webinar. My name's Sally and I'm one of the occupational therapists here at Lifetec. Today I'll be talking about disability access using mainstream technology. So I'll be covering some of the common access problems, some of the access solutions, and the advantages and limitations of choosing mainstream devices over purpose-built devices. So what is mainstream technology and what are mainstream mobile devices? Mainstream mobile technology refers to smartphones and tablets that you can purchase commercially. So there are different platforms, and these different platforms have different functions and different considerations. So the first platform I'll talk about is iOS. So this refers to iPhone, iPod and iPads. So a nice thing about the iOS devices is that they all look very similar, they're just different sizes. So they all have the same home button, and the same on, off and unlock buttons as well. So the Android devices are available as both tablets and phones, but there's lots and lots of different types of phones and tablets available. So the function of these devices varies depending on what make and model it is. So I'll talk about the Android platform in general today, but you do need to check the details of that particular type of phone or tablet. And it's a similar situation with the Windows tablets, laptops and phones. So the function varies between the different makes and models of the Windows devices. So what are some of the problems people will have in accessing different mainstream phones and tablets, and what are some of the solutions that are available? So when we're considering disability access solutions, we need to consider what are the potential options that we can add on to that device. So for iOS and Android, you can download lots of additional apps that might help out that person. So there's magnifier apps, there's text-to-speech apps, there's speech-to-text apps. For Windows, there are some apps available, some disability-specific apps, but there is a lot less. However, for Windows, you can download disability-specific software onto some of the devices. So the software tends to be more comprehensive than some of the apps, whereas you can't download external software onto the iOS and Android devices. So in terms of plugging in disability-specific mouses, keyboards or switches, you can do this for some Windows and Android devices that have a USB port or a USB adapter. However, with the iOS devices, there is no USB port or USB adapter to plug in external keyboards or mouses or switches. So you do need to do this via a Bluetooth connection. With things like a Bluetooth switch interface, and I'll talk more about this later on. So someone with a vision or hearing impairment might have trouble accessing a mainstream phone or tablet. The devices are designed to be quite discreet and stylish, so there's usually limited tactile buttons that you can feel on the devices. There's usually limited colour contrast, and the touchscreens are usually glossy and glary, and some of the auditory feedback can be quite discreet as well. So in the general settings, there's actually an accessibility menu and there's a section in there for vision. So there's things like making the text larger, being able to zoom in on the text and the apps and everything, changing the colour contrast, so white on black or black on white, and turning on voiceover as well. So when you turn on voiceover, basically the phone will speak out anything that your finger is hovering over or touching. So someone who is completely blind can use an iPhone or iPad by scrolling around the screen with their finger. It will speak out the option that their finger is over, and then they can double click to select that option. So similar options exist for Android as well, depending on the make and model of the phone or tablet that you have. Big Launcher is a free app available under the Android platform, and it basically just changes the display on the phone or tablet. So there's larger text with high contrast, and it's nice and simple as well. So there's similar accessibility options that exist under the Windows platform as well. And we've actually made a fact sheet which is up on our website, which goes through the instructions on how to change the accessibility options to increase visibility under different Windows platforms. So some of the Windows tablets will allow you to download external software onto the tablet. So for someone with a vision impairment, this might include the guide software, which allows simplified access to the computer. So the person can press 1 for emails, for example, and everything is in large text with high contrast, and it also speaks out every option as well. Zoom text is another type of Windows software. So basically it's a higher level screen magnifier than what you can get in the accessibility options for free. And it also acts as a screen reader as well. So there are different types of screen readers available for someone who has no vision and needs to scroll around the computer with no visuals and just with all the options being spoken out to them. So some of the hardware options for someone with a vision impairment, you can get high contrast keyboards that you can plug into some of the devices that have a USB port or a USB adapter. The Clevy keyboard's quite nice as well for someone who has a movement difficulty combined with a vision impairment, because the keys are nice and separated. So all of the platforms have similar accessibility options for people with a hearing impairment. So you can do things like turn on hearing aid mode if you have a hearing aid that is compatible for phone use. You can have different types of vibrations or visual alerts instead of sound alerts. You can turn on subtitles where they're available, and you can change the sound output if you hear certain tones better or if you have better hearing in one ear. So all of the devices are touchscreen, which can be difficult for people with poor fine motor control. So assistive touch is a feature on the iPhone or iPad, which allows the user to tap these symbols instead of having to use the buttons on the side. So you can also customize your own gestures. So you can put in a movement that is easy for the person to use as an alternative command. So there's similar options available under the Android platforms, and in newer models you're now able to control some things on the phone with head movements as well. So Windows has lots of accessibility options to help with movement difficulties. So you can do things like control if a key is held down for too long and it will only recognise one keystroke. You can make it so that you don't have to hold down multiple keys for the shortcuts. You can just press the keys individually. You can slow down the mouse cursor as well, so you don't need as finer movements to use the mouse. And we've actually made a fact sheet which goes through these accessibility options and the instructions for setting them up as well, and it's on our website. So styluses might be an option for people who have trouble isolating their index finger to access a touchscreen. So the picture here is the iFaraday stylus range. So they have disability-specific styluses where you don't need to touch with as much pressure, and there's options where you can wrap the stylus around the person's hand or arm, or have a mouth stick option as well. So voice control can be an option for people who have good consistent speech quality. So built-in voice control on phones can do the basics like calling someone. It's not highly accurate for anything beyond that, and you usually need to be able to touch the phone to turn it on, although some models you can now turn it on using a voice command. So you can also get a drag and dictation app for writing longer emails. So Dragon, naturally speaking, is a software that can be downloaded onto some Windows tablets. It is a lot more accurate than the app and the built-in voice recognition on phones, as you can train it to your own voice. So you can use it to write emails or Word documents. You can also use it to move around the tablet, so you can open Internet Explorer or open your emails, for example. So some of the alternative mouse options that you might be able to plug into Android or Windows devices that have a USB port or a USB interface are a trackball or a joystick. So these might be good for someone who doesn't have controlled arm movements, and head tracker or eye gaze. So with these you can control the mouse with your head movements or with your eye movements. So you might be able to plug alternative keyboard options into some Android or Windows devices. So this is a picture of the Clevy keyboard that has a keyguard over the top. So it basically separates out the keys so the person can't hit two keys at once. So switch access is an option when someone can't access the options we've previously discussed, but they do have a reliable, consistent movement. So the device will basically scan through options, and then the person will hit the switch when it gets to the option that they want. So to plug in a switch to a device, you need an interface, which helps them talk to each other. So a switch adapted mouse is a cost-effective option, and there's also USB options available, like the IntelliSwitch or Critic. So these need a USB port or a USB interface to plug into, so it will only work with some Android devices and some Windows devices. So Bluetooth switch interfaces work with the iOS devices or devices that don't have a USB connection. So the switching will only work within certain apps, and it might be slow to switch scan within the home screens of the devices. So Click to Phone with Housemate is an app that works with the Android platform and it works well with switch scanning. So everything is nice and simple, and you can do row column scanning to make it quicker as well. So the Grid 2 software works well with switch scanning also, as everything is nice and simple. So there's also word prediction for writing emails, and there's different communication pages as well. So the mainstream mobile devices are all designed to be quite complex, so someone with a cognitive impairment may struggle. So the Big Launcher app, available under Android, is nice and simple and might be easier for someone with a cognitive impairment to use. The Grid 2 software also has a nice simple display, and it also has word prediction as well, so it might be easier and faster to type out emails and Word documents and that sort of thing. So this software option is only available on some Windows devices. So for someone with an intellectual impairment, there's switching apps and software. So someone can play a game and learn cause and effect and learn switching skills as well. So what is the incentive of mainstream technology? So it's usually less expensive than purchasing purpose-built devices like speech-generating devices that have computer access inbuilt, or electronic magnifiers, or any of the purpose-built environmental control units, for example. It's seen as a cool option as well, as most people have a smartphone or tablet. You don't have to go through any process usually to apply for funding, so it's a lot quicker. You can just go and purchase the device. But surely there are limitations. So tablets and smartphones aren't generally as durable as some of the purpose-built devices, although you can get heavy-duty cases now. You usually have to add accessories, which adds to the cost. So there's limited funding available for smartphones and tablets. So the medical aid subsidy scheme exists to help subsidise purpose-built communication devices, but it will not fund tablets or smartphones. So some of the potential funding options are the Community Aids and Equipment Assistive Technology Initiative, Department of Veterans Affairs, Education Queensland, and the Workplace Modification Scheme. So the Community Aids and Equipment Assistive Technology Initiative will consider funding apps and software that supports communication, and also computer access that supports communication in a cyber community. So we have a fact sheet which is up on our website, which goes through funding options. Thank you for listening in today. I guess today has just been a taster of some of the options and considerations, so I'd encourage you to give us a call, give us an email, or Skype us, or drop in and see us to discuss your situation in more depth, and we can tailor our advice to your situation in particular. So thanks again.